Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is Xena Warrior Princess Season 1, Episode 8, Prometheus. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in this episode. So the episode begins with thugs or hitmen coming after Xena, who ends up killing most, but then one she decides that she can save. So she uses a healing technique she usually uses. However, that night he passes away, and she's at first confused by this because she had used this technique before and it had always worked, so she was surprised that he had passed, but then she remembers an oracle that Hercules had confided in her that foretold of Prometheus being bound by the gods, and in the event that he is bound by the gods, the gift he gave to mankind would start to disappear. That includes the ability to, create fire, as well as the ability to heal themselves. And the fact that this healing technique failed which had always worked before, is a sign that potentially that oracle is coming true. So Xena and Gabrielle travel to Io, who is, I guess, like a prophetess or a seer of some sort. I'm not sure. She was dancing on a stage, and then she gives Xena a test where she sets a rope above a candle, and there's basically like a dinosaur mouth, and Xena has to reach into the dinosaur mouth in order to pull down a tablet which supposedly has the answer. She, of course, gets it very close because she's very strong, but then the rope breaks and the head comes down, and she just barely misses getting harmed, but she does manage to almost get the tablet. It does end up being broken in the mouth, though, but that's okay because the tablet was actually blank. The true test was whether or not she was willing to, make a sacrifice to get the information. And so then Io gives her the true path where she has to go to Hephaestus's mountain, get a sword from inside of it. This sword is able to break the chains binding Prometheus. However, the one who gives the final blow to the chains will end up turning to ashes, and so basically it becomes a suicide mission. And Xena then decides to take on this mission. She travels with Gabrielle to the mountain, leaves Gabrielle with a sleazy salesperson while she goes to get the sword. She fights some of Hera's thugs while trying to get the sword because Hera turns out is the one who captured Prometheus. She gets the sword. As she comes out, she ends up fighting with Hercules because Hercules also knows what will happen when he deals the final blow, and he intends for him to be the one to do it, not her. So they have a bit of a fight. She wins the fight, so she takes the sword, goes to gather Gabrielle, who's met Aeolus at the same sleazy salesperson's stand. And then she continues with Gabrielle, though Hercules and Aeolus join them at a bar where they are once again accosted by Hera's underlings and end up in a fight, which Aeolus and Hercules assist with. And one of the thugs gets a hold of the sword and tries to attack Hercules, but Hercules has Hephaestus-made gauntlets, which prevent the sword from harming him, but the person who uses it turns to ashes, proving that that is in fact a consequence of using the sword. And Hercules manages to then take the sword, and he's not letting Xena go with it because he doesn't want her to be the one to deal the final blow, but they do agree to work together at this point, and they make their way to the mountain where Prometheus is bound. However, on the way it is revealed to Gabrielle by Aeolus, not that he intended to reveal it, he was trying to hide it, but she finds out that he was actually wounded in the bar brawl, and now that humans have lost the ability to heal themselves, even small scratches become deadly. And so at first she goes along with hiding it from Xena and Hercules. However, after a certain point, she's not able to anymore, so she offers to stay behind with Aeolus, who is told that his only chance really to survive this scratch is to rest until they can free Prometheus and they can heal again. So he and Gabrielle stay together. They bond. She tells him a story about soulmates. And at the end of the episode, they do end up kissing. So there is a little bit of a flirty vibe going on there. Though I don't believe it goes beyond into like the future of the series or anything. But that's something to note. The sidekicks get together. And then Xena and Hercules continue up and they also share moments. They end up kissing multiple times in the episode. And they do have a moment where Hercules, well, she basically tells Hercules that he taught her how to live again, and that, that's why she can't let him be the one to deal the blow because he brings hope to so many people, including herself, who again, he taught how to live. And then he basically says to her, when my wife died, I didn't think I'd feel anything close to it for anyone else again. And then I met you. So basically, they're both trying to save each other to not land this blow. And as they get to the final stretch of the cave, Xena manages to knock Hercules out and she takes the sword, making it to where Prometheus is bound. But there's some random eggs with reptilian humans in them that burst out, and she ends up having to fight them. Then Hercules wakes up, comes to help her, and manages to get the sword again. She's then carried off by a giant bird, and she manages to. Oh, wait, I think he's using her sword, like her regular sword. She has the magic sword, gets lifted up by the bird. He fights the lizard people. She eventually gets the bird to turn around and get off the bird. As she makes her way back around on top of the bird, she throws the sword to Hercules, who then deflects it with a rock right into the chain of Prometheus. So no one technically landed any blow, which means neither of them turned to ashes. But Prometheus, once one hand is free, is able to then release all of his other hands, and this allows for the gifts that he gave to come back to humans. That includes fire, and then Aeolus is able to heal himself. Hercules and Xena share one more kiss goodbye, and she says, until next time. And they once again part ways. And of course, I mentioned earlier, Gabrielle and Aeolus have their little flirtation and again part ways with their companions. And that is where this episode ends. But now that we've been reminded about what happened, it is time to rank the episode, first on the mostly objective ranking, followed by the personal ranking list. So we start with our single episode supporting character introductions, and that is Prometheus and Io. Both played a fairly significant role for the single episode. That brings us to 2. Then we have our multi-episode supporting character introductions. Now it is a little bit depressing. I thought they crossed over more frequently than they actually do, but Xena and Gabrielle guest star in a couple episodes on the Hercules side, and Hercules and Aeolus unfortunately I think it's only like maybe 3 episodes that they cross over into Xena, including this one. So even though they are in different seasons, because it's so few episodes, I ultimately decided that they would be multi-episode supporting characters, and they're each worth 2 points. So that's 6 points total. Then we have our supporting relationship developments, which is, Hercules and Xena sharing their kisses multiple times and having those confessions about, he saved her life or gave her life meaning. And, Xena makes him feel the same things that he felt for his wife, which he never thought he could. And that the reason he told her about the Oracle in the first place was because he knew he could trust her with it. And it's all very sweet. Second, of course, is Gabrielle nursing Aeolus, telling him a story about soulmates, and then them sharing a kiss at the end of the episode. So both of those is another 4 points, which brings us up to 10 already. But then we, of course, have the world building that takes place in this episode, which is if Prometheus is captured, mankind will lose the gifts that he gave us, which would be fire, the ability to use fire, the ability to heal ourselves, and then that he's able to be freed with a magic sword, but the one who frees him will turn to ashes. But of course, nicely done so that both of our heroes get to live. The workaround is to throw the sword, and no one then technically makes the blow, therefore nobody turns to ashes. A very simple solution. And that brings us up to 14 There was one negative, which of course is hiding your wounds from your allies. Aeolus was going to lie and hide his wound, which he had been. If Gabrielle hadn't figured it out, he probably never would have told anybody, wouldn't have rested, potentially would have died before they were able to free Prometheus. And I just think that sharing wound, like hiding your wounds, is a very, very bad idea. So with all of the points considered, this is a 10 out of 10 episode. And as always, when more than one episode shares the same score, we do rank in episode order. So we start with our mostly objective ranking, which is Sins of the Past. Then Prometheus is in second place, followed by Dreamworker, Cradle of Hope, The Reckoning, Chariots of War, The Titans, and then The Path Not Taken. And now my personal ranking. So obviously, I love that there was a crossover. I love that Hercules came back, that Hercules and Xena got to rekindle a little bit, because while I did say in a couple episodes ago, or is it the last episode? I can't actually remember anymore. Anyways, Ares and Xena is my number one pairing for the Xena universe, just because I think they have amazing chemistry, and he does recur pretty frequently, at least to my recollection. He's in at least a few episodes per season, but in the Hercules universe, my number one pairing is definitely Hercules and Xena, and they are definitely my number two pairing in the Xena universe. So the fact that they got to rekindle and that they are technically canon because they did have intimacy in the Hercules side of things in season 1 of Hercules, and they've got kisses in this episode, just makes it all the better. And personally, I think they should have ended up together, and I'm very sad that they didn't, but that's what fan fiction is for. Wish fulfillment if it's needed, you know? But I do like that they are canon, and I do like that they got to rekindle a little bit in this episode. It had a lot of action from start to finish. They dealt with the hitmen in the first, like bounty hunters. That's the word I was looking for all along. The bounty hunters at the beginning, then a bunch of Hera's thugs, then, Hercules and Xena have a little bit of a spout, then they have to go on this, like, epic quest to the mountain to find the sword, then take the sword to the other mountain to free Prometheus. They have to deal with the potential that it is going to be goodbye to one of them permanently, because the consequence of landing this blow and saving all of humanity by retrieving the gifts is ultimately one of their deaths. However, then they cleverly, or maybe accidentally, I'm not sure how much of it was truly planned, managed to avoid the death sentence by just throwing the sword and then deflecting it into the chain, where nobody ends up dying. Prometheus ends up being released, everybody gets saved, and they also had like the emotional moments and the romances. It's the first time Hercules and Aeolus are meeting Gabrielle, who is Xena's best friend. I just think that there's nothing about this episode that I didn't like. Like, absolutely nothing about it that I didn't like. And as a result of that, it left me full of joy. And I gave it a 10 out of 10. And in fact, I think it is the best episode in the season so far, which is why I put it in first place. Prometheus, followed by Sins of the Past, The Reckoning, Cradle of Hope, Dreamworker, The Titans, Chariots of War, and in 8th place for me, The Path Not Taken. And that brings us now to the series ranking so far. Mostly objective ranking, season 1 has 52 out of 240 so far. Personal ranking at 59 out of 240 so far. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Xena Warrior Princess season 1 episode 8, Prometheus. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.